Okay, guys, thanks very much for coming. It looks like we have almost 50 participants, so we'll get started right now. Hello and welcome to NAP Edmonton's 20 Questions event featuring Matt Woolsey. Just wanted to take a second to thank our top sponsors. You've seen all our sponsors slides going on the screen, hopefully. Our top sponsors, Remington, Qualico, Quadrille, and Panatoni Development. With the help of all of our sponsors, we've really been able to hit the ground running in these challenging times and provide some really excellent member benefits for our members and sponsors. Right now, we're advocating to all three levels of government on different issues affecting the commercial real estate industry as NAP Edmonton alone, and with our counterparts at NAP Calgary, NAP Vancouver, and NAP Toronto. We're working on bringing out all of our education events for free. So if you're a member, you can sign up online and access NAP corporate or nap.org's online education events, as well as a weekly national webinars, as well as local webinars like these with our industry leaders. So that brings me to what we're doing today, our 20 Questions event with Matt Woolsey, interviewed by Chad Griffiths. Just to introduce Chad. Chad has been the chair of our communications committee for the past year and was a former board member, as was Matt, with NAP Edmonton. He's helped us on initiatives like advocating for simpler rules for the CECRA, federal rent assistance, and Prosperity Edmonton, our initiative with 8 other business organizations on keeping taxes down. So welcome, Chad.
Thanks, Ned. Are we good to get going then?
Yeah, go ahead.
Awesome. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in. Matt and I have put together a number of questions that we think will be of interest to people on the call. If you have a question you want to ask as well, we'll certainly have time to do that. But I want to jump right into it here. And Matt, you and I were chatting a couple weeks ago about a quote by Warren Buffett. He said, it's only when the tide goes out that you get to see who's swimming naked. And naturally, that led to us talking about the city of Edmonton. But I don't want to dwell on the city. Instead, I want to ask you, is York swimming naked during this? And a secondary to that question, are you actually wearing pants right now?
So literally or figuratively, are we wearing shorts?
Yes, both. Okay. Literally and figuratively.
I got it. Well, happy to know. Happy to know we are wearing shorts at York. We are wearing shorts when the tide is out.
That's good to hear.
If there's any fans watching, we're wearing shorts.
Thanks for agreeing to do this too, Matt. We've spoken a couple times about this, and I think this should be a pretty lively chat. So thanks again for doing it.
No, honestly, I do appreciate it. Just a quick thanks to you and a quick thanks to Anand for all you guys are doing. I know it's not an easy battle with a bureaucracy like the city that has its own agenda and its own mission it's got to accomplish. So I appreciate you guys doing everything you do, and I do appreciate the opportunity as well. So thanks, Chad.
Yeah, thanks, man. So first question, well, I guess second question now that we got to see your shorts. What's your perspective on the industrial market coming out of COVID here?
I mean, that's such a big question, right? And I've certainly spent the last 5-6 weeks trying to cover every angle of this that I can, right? We're talking to tenants regularly, more than we ever have, and broadly, not just about can you pay the rent, but about what are you seeing in your business? What are the trends that are going on? Who's buying, who's not, what's selling, what's not, really with a goal to understanding what's going on today and what does it look like coming out of this? So a quote I did pull from an editorial that I like, and it's a little bit dry, so we'll probably drop half the users after this one, but it's from Mark Carney, a good Edmontonian, former governor of the Bank of Canada and Bank of England. He says, as our digital and local lives expand, our physical ones will contract, right? So I think that's really a fair summary, is about as succinct as you can about where we're going, perhaps, where we are, where we're going. So the obvious trends from an industrial perspective, the acceleration of Amazonification of the world, that seems to be an obvious one. We're all ordering a ton online, more than we ever did, right? From takeout food to toilet paper, which we're hoarding, right? And then anything and everything that we can get delivered to our door, we are. Walmart, which is a big box retailer, is also acting as almost a 3PL company, and have been for a while, right? You can sell your goods if you're a store on Walmart's website, just like you can at Amazon. Sorry, I could go on about this for a while. I guess that's why I'm here, so maybe I'll talk for a bit. But that's that Amazonification. I mean, it's a trend that this is really accelerated, obviously. And I think if you go to some of the bigger markets in the US, you can already see the evolution of retail to sort of mirror that trend. One development I'm thinking of that I kind of stumbled across was one called the Palisades Village in Los Angeles, in the Pacific Palisades, built by a guy named David Caruso, who's a big developer down in LA. He built the Grove Mall, if you've ever been there. But really what Palisades Village is sort of this new look on retail, which is he's taken a city block and built a fake town on top. So each retail space looks different. Some have bricks, some are made out of wood, and each space is probably only 1,500 square feet. But underneath it is an entire distribution network where the 54-foot tractor trailers can back into shared dock loading, which all gets distributed beneath the development and shot up to the different storefronts. I could see that maybe as being a bit of the future of retail, right? It's no accident that Amazon has a bookstore in that development, which incidentally, when you walk into, you want to buy every book because they know exactly what you're looking for, which is a little eerie. But anyway, that's obviously a huge trend that I think will come out of this. A bit of a bifurcation of industrial values. So depending on the user, I could see clear height, pallet positions meaning something, right? So I think we have to start looking at the value of real estate brokers, landlords, everybody in the community in terms of what value does the client get, right? If they can use a reach truck and rack to 35 feet, maybe a $10 basic rent actually achieves a savings for them in terms of their business. And what does that mean for older product? I don't think it's all bad. I think certainly it is going to B and C class real estate, as they put it, is going to take a bit of a hit, but maybe not, right? Some of these last mile delivery centers only need racking to 8 feet because of all the small SKUs that people have to pick. So if you've got a 50, 60-year-old warehouse that's next to a neighborhood, right? If you think about some of the neighborhoods in Edmonton, like Dominion Industrial and some of those old industrial areas that are next to neighborhoods, I mean, maybe there's actually some value there. Not all of it, right? But anyway, I'm kind of watching for that bifurcation a bit to see where it goes. What else really quick? My perspective on industrial coming out of COVID. I wrote transition to consumer staples and profitable SKUs. This is something a lot of our tenants are talking about. Some of them have actually been pretty successful through this, surprisingly. But what's selling are the old faithful products, the stuff that people know and love. And they're not trying the new, like one tenant put it, they're not trying the new, Cajun spiced potatoes or whatever. They're going to the regular creamers. So they're watching those trends a bit. Yeah, and the final one I would comment on, I guess, there's been some discussion, I know, in the industry that because of COVID, there needs to be more of a fail-safe. So people carry more inventory around. You know, a 5% increase in inventory could mean 100 million square feet of demand in the US or something like that. We talked a bit about this, Chad. I'm not totally sold that that's a trend. I'm not sure people are willing to pay more for security coming out of this, but it is something that's circling around. So a very long answer to your question. How's that sound?
That was a great answer. And I want to ask a follow-up on there, because I know you're a guy that takes a lot of pride in having meaningful relationships with all your tenants. So I imagine over the last couple of months, you've had regular conversations with all of them and trying to keep that dialogue open. How are you conversing with your tenants right now? Are you having phone calls? Are you doing Zoom calls? Wearing your shorts? Are you going to see them in person? How are you communicating with everyone right now?
You know, like we are having regular contact with our tenants. We're just having basically Zoom chats, 20-minute, 30-minute Zoom chats where we'll pool different tenants in totally different industries, Chad, to try and get them together just to talk to each other, talk to us. We all, I think, crave some knowledge of what the hell is happening out there, right? So if you're an oil guy, you still have your own portfolio of investments. You kind of want to know how a lumber producer or a food producer is doing. And if you're a food producer, you kind of want to know how the oil guy's doing, right? So we've tried to pool those tenants together and, you know, learn fascinating stuff out of it, right? One of our tenants told us that there was no more juice in Kelowna to be hauled. All of the juice has been hauled out of Kelowna. And that temporary foreign workers were having trouble getting, I guess, active in time to plant for next season. So what does that mean for juice and juice prices and all that stuff? Anyway, that's what we're doing. It's been a really good opportunity, and I'm sure you're seeing it as a broker. Like, are you finding people more receptive to your calls, Chad, if you just phone and?
Yeah, it's amazing. Every call has been doubled in time, where normally if it was a 5-minute call or a 10-minute call, it's now become a 20, 30-minute call. My phone regularly dies at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock. Just I'm on the phone nonstop. But to your point, I think it's actually given people an ability to communicate better, more efficiently. Like, I've learned more about some of my clients, about their families, just what struggles that they're going with at home with their kids. So it's given an opportunity to actually dive a little bit deeper than you normally would just through normal business where you're just talking about a space or a deal that's ongoing. It's been a lot longer conversations.
Yeah, totally. It does give you an opportunity to talk to people you maybe wouldn't normally for a long time and develop a relationship. We try to do that for what it's worth. Like, we really focus on those relationships, and I think it's helping us collect rent a bit. But yeah, there's an opportunity there, right?
Yeah, I agree.
The fact that people are tuning in to watch us have a conversation is shows how much time everyone has now too.
I don't know how many people tuned out after they saw your shorts, but so this will live on in infamy. So
my wife told me not to, Chad. That helps. She told me not to.
So I want to pivot to a topic that you and I have discussed numerous times over the years, and that's just all levels of government. I complain about the City of Edmonton probably more than anybody. So I want to get your thoughts on what the City of Edmonton's doing. They made some cuts. The interim city manager went on and did a newscast and literally cried when he had to temporarily lay off 900 people. And it resulted in a 0.02 or maybe it was a 2% cut in non-residential taxes. So I want to get your thoughts. What's the city doing? And then also from a federal standpoint, is the federal government doing enough with the CERCA program, with some of the stimulus packages that they have for wages? Is there enough being done from municipal, provincial, federal governments to help out commercial landlords and tenants right now?
So that's a great question. I mean, on the municipal side, what they're doing, and I could have this wrong, and I'm sure I'll get corrected on this, but as much as I know, if you make annual payments to the city, you can defer those now by up to 3 months. But if you're on the TIPS program, you cannot. Is that your understanding, Chad?
Yeah, I believe it was 2 months, but I'm sure the truth is somewhere in the middle.
So, I mean, I think giving a break, a deferment on the tips program would be really helpful. I did talk to someone at the city who said that was in the works. I haven't found it yet on their website or anywhere where I've looked, but something like that would sure be helpful. To your comment, yeah, I mean, we chatted about this, and I, at risk of sounding like a complete ass, I mean, it is, yeah, like the guy had to lay off people. That sucks. You know, I had a tenant phone 2 years ago that runs an auto body shop in a building on the south side, and he said, your op costs have gone up on our little space by $700 a month. And I said, Gord, well, look at the breakdown. That's all property taxes, right? Like, we're not even going to charge a fee on that piece. And he said, you realize I have to lay somebody off just because of this increase. Like, I'm going to lay somebody off because I can't pay for this. And I said, I get it, you know, contact your counselor, all that stuff. It's really tough, right? Because that invisible, it's so easy to quantify laying off 900 people at the city in one go, but how do you quantify a doubling of property taxes over 5 years? Like, think about the ripple, the knock-on effects of that in terms of people not maintaining buildings. We've talked about this a bunch, right? Not maintaining buildings, parking lots, putting off repairs, all the jobs that you maybe would have hired to just help improve your business, take a bit of a chance, like all of that to be redirected towards city building projects, right? So, and we could go on and about that today. I printed this off for you, Chad, because I saw this in the journal today. I don't know if you saw this.
I did.
So this is that fancy police headquarters in the north, which is a beautiful building. And I can't think this, I actually think this article's got to be wrong, Chad. It says, expected cost for the new roof is now 119.65 million.
Yeah. Well, I think that must be for the whole building, because I thought the building itself was 110 million. And then with the leak, maybe that's increased in the total cost to 119.
Yeah, so the article says roof, but you're right. I mean, but even then, who's building $110 million police, even if it's a headquarters? Like, it's absurd, right? It's a 100,000 foot building. How do you do that? I'm all for nice architecture. I really am. But there's like tasteful, nice architecture, and then do you need to do this?
It reminds me of that bus barn that they did on Fort Road as well, which ballooned from being a $100 million building to coming in at $210 million to hold transit buses. It was a $210 million building that has $1 million worth of art on the roof, and it's only to hold buses. And the building won architectural awards. So that's what concerns me as a taxpayer myself, as an advocate for people that are paying taxes. Those kind of decisions are concerning to me.
Yeah, sure. Well, sure they are. I mean, they should be concerning. But here's, I think a bit of a sad truth that comes out of this, Chad, is that that all gets glossed over now.
Yep.
Right? Like West LRT, all these, like if you've driven Blatchford, I mean, there's a green little power plant in the middle and little lots that aren't selling. Like, hey, all good. But I think that all gets glossed over now, which is, I think, a little bit sad, because the government has to bring out the money cannon and fire it wherever it can. And the city's already making noises about shovel-ready projects. And I actually understand that right now. I do. I think maybe that is the wise choice. It just is frustrating when we've labored under this increasing tax rate for so long, you know, squealing the whole time, and nobody's listened. And now it feels like it'll get swept under the rug a bit, which is understandable, but really disappointing, because it is a problem. Anyway, sorry, that was a way too long divergence. I know we can go on about property taxes for a long time. So
people must definitely start tuning out if we drone on too long.
Yeah, no, for sure. But the one I will comment on, you know, I think as a landlord, obviously the provincial, and this, everybody who's a landlord on this line will agree, that provincial, you know, Jason Kenney's remarks about landlords not being able to evict tenants were a little frustrating. I think we made it through that. Trudeau, like, the bad part generally of all government has been their virtue signaling, right? Trudeau saying, like, we're here to help the tenants. Well, like, our phones rang immediately. right? And we don't know the details of the program. We have a broad outline. You still have to pay rent for May 1. It's all like, we appreciate the help, and I like that they're rolling out programs and then trying to figure it out as they go. But they have to stop the virtue signaling, right? We're here for you, but stay tuned for 30 days while we iron it out. Like, you're better just not to say anything, right?
Yeah, it makes a good soundbite when you have a press release saying that you're coming to the aid of commercial tenants and landlords all over the country. But if you don't have any details, it's a bit meaningless of a press release.
Yeah, no, it creates problems top to bottom. But nice to know they're thinking of us, I guess.
Yeah, that's kind of the comment that I've heard too, is that the people are happy that it's at least being considered. We need more details, and there needs to be more community involvement to make sure that the plan is robust enough to actually have some help. But I think overall people are happy that at least it's on their radar, so that some decisions can be made.
You know what? And something I should add, like, if I'm being totally candid about it, something I liked about it is that it requires disclosure from tenants in terms of their sales, right? Like, it's a forgivable loan, as I understand it. But it becomes non-forgivable if the CRA audits or checks into it and discovers that, in fact, your tenant didn't qualify. So it puts the onus on landlords, which I'll be honest, I think helps our position with some tenants where, and not all of them, like 90% of them have been honest and forthright and wonderful through this whole thing. But it does put the onus to say with some of them, look, you can't pay nothing and expect to pay nothing without communicating and without giving us some information, right? We owe it to our other tenants to understand that they're really in hot water, right? Because if I say to this tenant, okay, it's okay, you don't pay, well, it says to all the other tenants who worked their butts off, who put their asses on the line to pay the rent, that they could have gotten away with it, right? So the onus is on us, and this government program actually helps us, I think, say to some of those problem tenants, you have to show, right? You have to show where you're at, because we all have to do our part.
And that's a good point. And I think everybody is trying to do their part, both on the private sector and on the public sector. So where I'm hard on the city of Edmonton as an example, I do value the city administration and council and all the work that's going on. So I poke at the interim city manager for crying about laying off 900 people, but I'm sure that was a tough decision. So I'm being somewhat facetious when I'm poking at that. But on the topic of everybody doing their part,
it gives you something to think about on your funicular ride, Chad.
That's $20 million well spent.
Yeah.
Only works 3 months a year.
Yeah.
So on the topic of everybody doing their part, though, what's harder to get out of this for the economy? Is it going to be harder getting out of this from a COVID perspective, or is it going to be harder getting out of this from low oil prices, which have been systemically low for the last 5 or 6 years, but now are at all-time lows? What's going to be harder, getting out of this from COVID or getting out of this from low oil prices?
I mean, yeah, fuck. Pardon me. Oops, I wish I had the answer.
We'll beep that out on when we put this time.
Perfect. Yes, thank you. They're not exclusive, right? The problems aren't mutually exclusive. COVID's caused a huge drop in demand, which has caused the buildup of supply and, negative oil prices, right? I think in some respects, there is a silver lining here that I'm trying to focus on, Chad, is that we've been selling our oil at a discount in Alberta for so long that there hasn't been the drilling activity here that there has been in the Permian Basin, for instance, right? As far as I understand it, right? And I'm just like everybody else reading the articles that I can. It'll be a bloodbath in the States, right? It'll be really tough. And to a certain extent, it'll be tough in Alberta as a result, because I think a lot of Albertan companies have been doing business in the Permian Basin to help pay the bills, right? So there will be a knock-on effect of that. But if you look at Alberta's drilling rig count, I mean, I think it's kind of been in the tank for the last 4 years. So we didn't have a bunch of companies levered up, based on expected future prices, so that they could then, sell that into the market or whatever. Like, I don't think we have the same carnage expected, at least in Alberta. So I'm hopeful from that point of view that even though it's ridiculous that we're giving away barrels of oil that will get burned anyway for less money, even though that's being ridiculous and it remains ridiculous, in some sense, it's caused a depression of activity, which means I hope we don't have as far to fall as a result, right? And the other thing is, I think whether you're fracking like a producer in the States, or whether you're an autocrat who's got to keep his population happy, $20 oil doesn't work, right? It doesn't work. It's not sustainable. So production will naturally back off. I think it'll take time because nobody's going to travel, it seems like, and this is all obvious stuff. So sorry if you're bored, but it'll take some time to get through. But what I also gives me hope here is that Alberta isn't alone. Like, remember 15, 16 when that crash happened, and it felt like, for me, that was my first real oil crash, right? It felt like we were staring into the abyss that December as oil prices kept going down and down and down, and you weren't sure where the bottom was. Well, this time it's kind of being, again, covered over by COVID. So the government's there with their money cannon trying to support whomever they can. Well, they weren't there for us last time, right? Like, the federal government was nowhere, or felt like that. So maybe in some respects, actually, the downturn will be less severe because of that. And we have less to fall because we've been isolated from some of the activity elsewhere. So that, I don't know, I'm actually kind of optimistic that when oil comes back, and it will come back, we'll actually be okay coming out of it.
Yeah, I share your comments on that, Matt. I want to move more into some personal questions here. And as a good segue, we had a question from Brandon Cott. Have both of you been getting haircuts during this lockdown? So you go first.
Who, both me and you?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you, Brandon. That's not the question I thought you'd ask. No, yes, my wife and kids gave me a haircut with some borrowed clippers. I sat in the bathtub and they went at it, and it's it's not looking great, but we're doing our part. You?
Yeah, I actually did my own. I cut it myself, and I'd say from like the Zoom profile, like straight on, it actually looks pretty good, but it's a bit of a train wreck when I do the side profile. Went a little too high on the top. So Zoom is good, but
this part here that's tough, right? Or whatever this is back here, that's been the tricky part.
Yeah, that's a hard part. You need to maybe start a YouTube channel on how to cut your own hair, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
It'll be the follow-up for this one.
Yeah.
But going into the personal, how have you been making the most out of your time? What are you doing right now to maximize this changing economic environment, and personally, what are you doing to make the most of this time right now?
So, I've been really obsessed, and I think my dad has too, like, about what does this mean, right? What does it mean on a global level, regional level, local level? It feels like the board has been flipped over a little bit. So for myself, I've been spending a lot of time reading, talking to as many people as I can, any contacts I have in distribution, in oil and gas, in corporate mergers and acquisitions, like anybody I can, car dealers, whoever I can talk to, I'm talking to right now. I'm trying to figure out, those little unexpected threads that come out of this stuff, where you say, oh yeah, of course it would make sense that this business is doing well because of this factor. Like, I'm trying to find those threads that I can tug on to come out of this. More than that, really thinking about like the values, my values personally, right? What have I done so far in my career? Is it working? What are our business's values? Do they match what's going to happen going forward? And then I think at the end of that, you've got to put a plan together. You have to put a view together on what the future looks like, right or wrong. you have to be flexible, but you've got to come up with a view and you've got to act on it, because to a certain extent, there's a lot of suffering going through this, but this is also an opportunity for all of us to do deals that we couldn't do before, right? Like for you as a broker, even there's I think a ton of opportunity for, if you can be flexible and develop relationships and work well with landlords and tenants and owners. I mean, if you can really hustle and be creative, I think there's a lot of opportunity for people.
No, I would agree with those comments.
Yeah, sorry. I what are you doing? You reading lots? What are you up to?
Yeah, I'm trying to read as much as I can. I'm probably going through a book a week right now. Just more time in general. Just want to fill that shoot with as much information as I can. So I'm reading a lot. I actually did a little looking into that author that you mentioned yesterday, that Ernest Shackleton. So
Yeah.
I just did a little bit of research on him with some of his explorations in the 1900s. But I wanted to ask you a follow-up on that question. So are you reading his book, or are you just reading a little bit more about him? And then maybe share what you said to me about that, because I found that fascinating.
I don't know, it's fascinating. I just I heard about this story like for the first time 3 or 4 years ago, and I was just sharing it with you yesterday, Chad. And Ernest Shackleton was this, I think, a sort of a frustrated Arctic explorer, right? Or Antarctic explorer, who had an opportunity to explore the Antarctic previously, finally got his shot to do it, got his own crew, a couple of ships. He was going to go, I think, walk across Antarctica or something like that. And everything that could go wrong went wrong for this guy. Like every single thing, right? He left London, World War I broke out. He got to Antarctica after, I think, getting lost on the way or something. His ship gets frozen in ice. The ship gets broken apart by the ice. Him and his crew live on an iceberg for like 2 years, hunting seals and all this stuff. I think at some point they decide that they have to go find land. They think they figured out where they are. So they get in the 2 lifeboats and they all sail to a place, I think it was called Elephant Island, where they eat eggs and whatever seals they can find. They decide nobody's going to find them there. Nobody cares where they are because of the war. So he and a couple guys commandeer one of the lifeboats and they sail to another island, some whaling island, but they land on the wrong side, which is the side with the treacherous glacier. And they have to hike across the glacier through crevasses, on and on through all this stuff. But the moral of the story is this guy, he goes out in a whaling ship to find his crew in the island. They can't find the island. They get turned back 3 times due to weather. It just goes on and on and on. But the moral of the story is this guy, this leader, somehow manages to keep his crew focused during the whole thing. They dress up every day. They all have routines. They explore different parts of the island. They're on patrol. They have plays. They have responsibilities the whole time going through it to keep them engaged. And when they finally get rescued, right as World War I is ending, the amazing thing is all of them survive. All of his crew members come through it alive, which, if you can picture how isolating this is, imagine being on an iceberg in the middle of World War I with no help and having the mental fortitude to come through that, right? And survive with all of your crew on the other side. Anyway, I just thought, so I've been continuing to wear a tie because of that. That's my little gesture to Ernest Shackleton.
That's impressive. And Chantel says, yes, it's a great story, worth the time reading. So if Anand can remember, maybe we'll even just put a note of Ernest Shackleton in the body for anyone that wants to look it up. A few things I read on it last night looked pretty fascinating. So we'll put
if you think your life is bad, read this guy's life and it's tough.
I mean, he was on an iceberg, no Wi-Fi either, I'm guessing, hey?
That's right.
So Dave Young has a question. So we'll actually, I want to touch on this because I think it's a pretty important topic, not just for you being a landlord, me being a broker, for NAIOP as a whole. Given that May 25th is when the city discusses adjustments to the capital budget, what can we do to make sure our comments are heard?
Sorry, Dave, I don't, that's a really good question. We should probably talk about that, to be honest. Like, we should probably band together as a group. But I would argue, like, what leverage do we have now. I mean, it's important more than ever that the city hears that taxes are unsustainably high. But will that change the political view that shovel-ready projects need to go? I'm not sure it does. So I don't want to sound disheartening. But Dave, we should talk, and we should kind of gather the band together again and see how we get that message heard, because it's critical. It's critical, right?
Well, that might be something that NAOP can even facilitate too, is to do a Zoom call like this with anyone that's interested in talking about it, and just get some people to discuss some ideas on it. Because I agree with Dave. It's that was an important time to make sure our voices are heard. Otherwise, we're just going to see more spending steamrolled over us with little accountability. So I agree. I think it's a very important topic.
Yeah. Yeah.
So going forward, I want to ask you a question related to other professionals. Doesn't need to be brokers or landlords. It could be anybody in the industry. What traits do you see that are important for people succeeding in this industry?
You know, it sounds cliche, right? Hard work is critical, right? In my view, I've really tried always to outwork the competition. I always picture that they're coming for me, and I better do a better job faster than they can. Integrity, I think, is critical, right? And I think that probably carries through to everybody who's watching right now. I mean, you can only do your best, right? But if you're honest as you possibly can be all the time, then it's tough for anything to bite you in the ass, right? And I think people respect that over time. And then for me, the big one is being tenacity, right? Like I'm like a lot of people, and a lot of people in this business, I really like winning. I love the thrill of it. But man, you sure get beaten down sometimes, right? We're all familiar with that. You're on the goal line, and it's a done deal, and you're daydreaming about how that building will look and what message it sends to the market, and then it just poof. So learning how to take that in stride is a big one too. But I think I think there's still a lot of opportunity with it. So I'd say hard work, integrity, tenacity. Those are my three.
Thanks, Matt. The thing we talked about yesterday, and I want to follow up on it as well, is just mentorship. So first question, who, and I know you mentioned that there were a few, so I would like you to touch on all of them, because I think that they all had a pretty big impact and shaped who you are as a leader. The question is, who has shaped you as a leader in growing to who you are? Who's been some of your good mentors?
Yeah, for sure. Well, my dad being the first and foremost, right? He, like it says in that bio there, my wife was laughing when she read it, but because I don't have anything to do with Scouts, full disclosure. We've helped them in a couple of spaces. I don't know why that's in my bio. So I do volunteer with other stuff, but not Scouts, okay? So it's out. But my dad absolutely is a huge mentor. I mean, he's a guy that came up from nothing on his own, and just kept hustling, right? Like, and was just a pure example of just grit and just staying in the game and outworking the competition, you know, and always trying to improve himself, right? Like we always laugh as a family up until, gosh, even now, like, but I remember as a kid, I'd open his trunk to put my hockey bag in or something, and there'd be Tony Robbins tapes scattered everywhere, right? Or there'd be another, you know, a book, right, on how to increase your business, or a self-help book or whatever. Like he was constantly, even last Christmas, he gave me, right, this little book, One Minute Manager, right? He just handed it to me. You've got to read this book. You've got to. So anyway, he's been a huge mentor for me for a whole bunch of reasons. So absolutely. Two other people that have had big influences on me, for what it's worth. I went to school out east in Toronto, and I took a class from a guy named Mitch Goldhar, who owned Smart Centers and Callaway REIT, amongst other things, or a lot of the shares of it, Chad. And we called the class "Get Rich with Mitch." And every Wednesday night he'd pull into the parkade in his Bentley coupe and get out and teach a class on real estate development. And it was wide ranging and all over the map in terms of where his head was at. But I always felt that if you really sat and listened to what he was saying, he was teaching you how to be a real estate developer, right? Which is to have your antenna up to trends, to what's happening, to different sites, you just have to be open all the time and listening. You have to have grit and tenacity, like his story, if you guys ever read it, it's amazing. He tied up all these Walmart sites. Walmart approached him because they liked what he was doing. He tied up all these sites as a small developer, put his ass on the line to hold on to them. And Walmart phoned him and said, "Hey, deal's done. We're not coming to Canada." Right? And his response was, "I know you're not coming to Canada today, but I know you're going to come sometime. And when you come, I'll be ready." So he horse traded and did all this stuff to hold these sites. And of course, when they came back, there he was, right? And the rest is kind of history. I guess I have a lot of people that influence me. Hey, the other person who's had a big influence is Dennis Hahn at Eagle Builders. He's become a good friend of mine. He's just a guy that him and his family have created a business out of their imaginations, right? They just provide solutions and they just imagined it. And if nothing else, it's just taught me the power for me and for my kids too. Like, that imagination is probably the most important thing you have. It sounds cliche and easy to say anything's possible, all that stuff. You got to see this business though, right? He has imagined solutions, and there they are in a giant factory spitting out concrete panels. It's been inspirational for me, and I always try and remember that when it comes to our customers, right? How can we provide solutions for them?
Interesting. Well, now that I know that you're not an Eagle Scout, I was going to ask you how you're going to navigate through this jungle, but apparently you can't wield an axe or a hatchet to get you through it easily. But I do want to get your thoughts. And before I ask this last question as well, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to ask them now, and we'll get to them after this question.
Anyone watching, congratulations. That's great if you've made it this far.
Yeah. I think a lot of people are still on it. Maybe they want to see your shorts again. The outro. And so I'll put you on the spot a little bit with this, and answer it how you feel free if you can, knowing that nobody's crystal ball is any clearer than the next. But what do you see the forecast looking for Edmonton in the near future, call it the medium term and the long term? What's your outlook on Edmonton?
Well, we're here, aren't we, Chad? It's nuanced. Can I say that? It's nuanced, right? Especially in our industry. There are threads of opportunity. We're all going to have to work hard to find what they are and take advantage of them. I do think government spending was a problem before this. I think it was a huge disadvantage. And I think, I don't know what it looks like. I don't know what the impact looks like coming out of this, but I suspect with all the debt that the Alberta government's going to have to take on 2, 3, 4 years from now, we're going to have to pay the piper, and that could affect Edmonton badly. I think agricultural is a huge opportunity that we have in this province that we have to really chew on a bit. I even think renewable energy is a big opportunity we have in this province that there's probably a bunch of people rolling their eyes too, but it's a sunny province, okay? It's a sunny province and it's windy, so there's got to be something there. But long term, I think we have to remember who we are as Albertans and get back to the advantage we used to have. We've talked about this too, Chad, but like what I always grew up knowing Edmonton was not as good as other cities, right? But we always have this inferiority complex that we carry around with us because of that. But I think that is what makes us so successful and what makes us who we are, right? Is that we don't know any better. You know, like we don't. People don't know we shouldn't start airlines, we shouldn't start banks, insurance companies, world-beating construction companies, food processors. Like we just don't know that we shouldn't do these things, and then we end up absolutely kicking ass with them because we have this kind of entrepreneurial attitude in Edmonton. I really think that attitude's got to prevail going forward, and if we can do that, there is really a huge runway for us in the city. I think we have to push back against this sort of overcrowding of groupthink and have, you know, using our collected resources to do big projects. I just think we have to push back on that. Remember what got us here, which was just that roll up your sleeves, blue collar entrepreneurial spirit that Edmonton has, I think in spades over even Calgary or other cities in the country, right? We're better than Winnipeg, but we're forgotten about otherwise. And that's, I think, our ace in the hole. And that's something we can't forget.
That's a great answer. So a couple of comments came in, one from your dad. You better thank your mom and your wife.
Thanks, Mom. Thanks, Nat.
And another question from Dave Young. Do you have any concerns about the debt markets and the access to debt in Alberta? And how do you think pricing is impacted?
Yeah, you know, certainly we have concerns, right? I should say this. I mean, a huge compliment and shout out to all of the chartered banks. They have been wonderful through this, right? And I'd say even in refinancing, Dave, they are stepping up. I think we're all a bit hesitant, but the banks, in my opinion, this sounds crazy. They're showing leadership. They're actually showing leadership in terms of both how to get through this and how to come out of it. So right now, in terms of pricing and in terms of availability of credit for the world that we work in and the projects that we do, the banks have stood beside us. So that's what I see right now.
Do you see any issue with new credit coming in for someone going and tying up a building right now and working through the channels of getting a new mortgage? How do you see that credit market unfolding?
Yeah, no, I do. That's going to be tough, without a doubt. Without a doubt. Like banks are going to go to their good customers right now, I think, and probably work really closely with them. But I mean, yeah, it is. I imagine it's going to be tough if you own a couple buildings and you've got something under contract. But again, right, that's the market we're going to be in. And if you can hustle and string the pieces together and get creative, there's going to be a way. Vendor take back mortgages, you know, who knows what it looks like. There'll be more opportunity to work with people now because we all need to work together to get something done, right? That's my 2 cents.
And maybe that's a good note to end on right there, is that we do need to work more together. So it's whether it's doing these kind of calls for NAIOP or just collaborating with other people. I think fostering that community mindset is probably more important than ever. Yeah,
like if you want to sort of give up on some of your fees, Chad, and
what's giving up 50% to zero?
Yeah, fair enough.
Dad said that if you brought up fees, I had to pop back in and cut you off.
Good.
Well, guys, thank you so much for taking the time. That was really excellent. I really enjoyed hearing those stories and just thinking about how we can take advantage of this time. I think that's a real important thing that we got to take away from this, is that there's no time to feel sorry for yourself, and there's things that will go up and down. But the folks that we've been talking to in our membership have been finding those opportunities, and they're harder to get to. So, you know, we got to be focusing on it. So thank you to Chad, and thank you to Matt. I want to thank all of our sponsors again. We're going to be posting this webinar online next week for our non-members. If you're not a member yet, sign up, and we'll be sending you a note about that. But we'll post this on our YouTube channel next week, and we'll include all of the links to the stories that Matt was talking about there, as well as NAOP's medium-term economic recovery plan that came from a lot of conversations with our sponsors, talking about how we should prioritize some of that capital spending. I posted that in the comments, as well as our questions on SECRA for the government, which we are talking about in a national call today, and in a call with Minister Morneau's office hopefully next week. So I'll post all of those links online. But in the meantime, thanks for everyone for coming, and thanks Matt and Chad for doing it.
Yeah, no, awesome. Thanks, guys.
See you soon.
See ya.
Here.
Put my pants on.